People say I have a calming presence. Maybe it's the way I speak, or the way I glide instead of rush. At Sorel Bridal, that's kind of essential. You're managing dreams stitched in silk and panic attacks hidden under tulle. Brides trust me with the most emotional decision of their lives, and I never let them see me sweat. Not even after what happened with Daniel. Not even after everything came crashing down behind the scenes. We'd been together for 3 years. Not perfect, but I thought it was solid. He was charming in that quiet, confident way, the kind of man who made promises with his eyes before his lips. I didn't notice the small lies at first, the late meetings, the subtle distance. When I finally found out he was cheating, it felt like the floor dropped out from under me. And the worst part? I had no idea who she was. He just walked away. No closure, no name, just silence. I buried it. That heartbreak, that humiliation, I folded it neatly and tucked it away like a dress you'll never wear again but can't bring yourself to throw out. I went back to work, kept smiling, kept fitting veils and smoothing satin. I told myself it was over, that it didn't matter anymore. Until one slow Tuesday afternoon, she walked in, Vanessa Duarte. She said the name so casually, but to me it cracked like thunder. The mistress, the other woman. Standing right there in white lace, gushing about her upcoming wedding. And me? I smiled, because suddenly I had something he never gave me. Opportunity. I kept my expression soft, tilted my head just enough to show interest, not judgment. Years in bridal retail teach you how to read a woman without letting her feel it, every twitch, every hesitation. Vanessa had the glow, but it wasn't real. It was practiced, performed, like she needed me to believe she deserved the fairy tale. And maybe she did, but not with him, not with Daniel. I guided her to the fitting lounge, my hands steady even though my stomach turned. She chatted easily, oblivious, or pretending. That part I couldn't quite figure out. "My fiancé is just incredible," she said, and I nodded like I hadn't heard the same line from a dozen broken brides before her. "He finally left that old, tired relationship," she added, with a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. I swallowed hard. Old, tired. That was me, apparently. A chapter he skimmed through on his way to something shinier. And yet, I stood there, helping her zip up her dreams. As she stepped into the first gown, I watched her reflection more than the dress. She was beautiful, sure. But there was something else, a restlessness in her, like she was trying to convince herself this was real. "This one's stunning," I told her, smoothing the fabric. "It says, 'I win.'" She smiled, not catching the weight in my words. Or maybe she did. But I was the professional. Calm, collected, composed. She was here to play bride. I was there to play along. The fitting continued in silence for a few moments, just the soft rustle of fabric and the click of my measuring tape. I listened to her talk about florals, the venue, the color palette, all the carefully curated pieces of her new life. But my mind kept circling the same question. Did she know? Was she aware of the role she played in someone else's unraveling? Or was she just another girl sold a story by a man who rewrote the truth to suit himself? I adjusted the hem of a lace gown, crouched at her feet, while she twirled in front of the mirror. I used to imagine this moment for myself. Not in this boutique, of course. Somewhere quieter, simpler. I imagined Daniel looking at me like I was his whole world. That dream had died months ago, but now I stood in its ashes, watching the woman who helped torch it parade around in white. And still, I smiled, because grace is power, and silence, when chosen, can be a weapon. As she admired herself, giddy with her own reflection, I took one quiet breath. I wouldn't break her down. I wouldn't scream or cry or demand answers. That's not how this was going to go. If she wanted a dress, I'd help her find the perfect one. But somewhere in the folds of silk and the shimmer of sequins, she would feel it. A shift, a truth. There she was, wrapped in lace and lies. And me? I was wrapped in something much stronger. The next time she walked in, I was ready. Not in an obvious way. I didn't change my tone or tighten my smile. No, I wore the same calm expression I give every bride who steps through that door. But inside, I was sharper than ever. That's the thing about heartbreak. If you don't let it break you, it hones you, refines you. I greeted her like an old friend, asked about her day, complimented her earrings, every word wrapped in silk, every sentence stitched tight with control. She still didn't recognize me, or maybe she did and chose to pretend. Either way, she leaned into the performance, telling me all about her wonderful fiancé and how he finally got the courage to leave that sad little relationship. I gave a soft laugh, polite and practiced, and kept my hands busy adjusting hangers and fabrics. Good for him, I said, like her words hadn't sliced through me. Like I wasn't the woman she'd just reduced to a footnote. That sad little relationship had a name, mine. But I didn't flinch. I pulled the next gown from the rack, silk organza, hand-stitched bodice, perfect for a dramatic entrance. This one's stunning, I told her, my fingers grazing the fabric. It's bold, confident. The kind of dress that says, I win. She laughed, completely unaware. Or pretending to be. I wasn't here to destroy her. That wasn't the point. I was here to make sure she saw the truth, and felt it cling to her like satin. She twirled in front of the mirror, letting out a small gasp as the gown caught the light. Oh, this one, she whispered. He's going to lose his mind when he sees me in this. I smiled, not too much, just enough to look genuinely pleased. Inside, I felt the echo of those same words. Words I used to say to myself when I imagined our wedding day. I used to believe I was the one, that all the brokenness in Daniel would eventually soften. But she was right. He didn't choose softness. He chose spectacle. I helped her into the next dress, a mermaid-cut masterpiece with a beaded train. As I fastened the buttons along her back, my fingers moved with delicate precision, though my thoughts weren't nearly as gentle. I wondered what she knew, how much she'd been told or sold. Did she ever question the timing? The coldness in his eyes when he talks about the past? I almost asked her, but instead, I focused on the dress. Let her feel beautiful. Let her feel safe. Because that's how the truth works best, when it sneaks in quietly. When you're distracted by something sparkly, and suddenly the floor shifts. That's when it hits the hardest. So I stayed present, asked if she liked the sweetheart neckline, suggested a veil with a pearl comb, and all the while, she kept talking about the venue, the flowers, the playlist, painting a perfect picture, and I kept holding the frame. As I pinned the final hem, she looked at herself in the mirror like she was trying to memorize the moment. I've waited so long for this, she murmured. I nodded, stepping back, letting her have it. Let her soak in the glow of a future she thought was hers alone. I wasn't going to take that away. Not yet. But I could feel something shift, not just in her, but in me. For the first time, I wasn't mourning what I lost. I was quietly watching the cracks begin to show. She thanked me, all smiles and soft laughter, like we were sharing some sacred secret of womanhood. Maybe we were, just not the one she thought. You're really good at this, she said. You make everything feel easy. I almost laughed. Easy? If only she knew. But I kept my tone light. That's the job, I replied. A good fit makes everything feel right, even when it's not. Her brow furrowed for just a second. Then it passed. But I saw it. The seed was planted. She left with a bounce in her step, clutching fabric swatches and bridal bliss. And me? I walked back to the workroom and exhaled slowly. Vanessa was busy playing bride, but I was writing the final act. Every fitting, every compliment, every carefully placed thread. It wasn't just tailoring. It was precision. It was preparation. And the next time she came back, I'd be ready to open a seam she wouldn't see coming. She came back the following week, all sunshine and silk. Vanessa was the kind of woman who filled a room with her presence, even when she wasn't trying. But this time, I noticed something different. Her eyes lingered longer in the mirror. Her laugh had a slight hesitation. It was like she'd seen a shadow in a well-lit room and couldn't quite place where it came from. I greeted her as usual, kind, composed, and asked how she'd been. "Stressed," she said, "but excited." I nodded. "Weddings will do that." As I guided her into the fitting room, I asked small questions. Not probing, just gentle nudges. "How did you two meet again? When was it exactly?" She answered easily at first, but then her timeline started to wobble. The dates didn't add up. The math of betrayal never does. I let her talk, offering affirming mums and soft smiles while inside. I took notes. She didn't know she wasn't the first. She had no idea he'd used the same lines, the same gestures, that I'd been the dry run for her big show. She slipped into a new gown, the most expensive one we carried. Layers of imported lace, crystals that caught the light like secrets waiting to be exposed. I adjusted the bodice, smoothing it with a practiced hand, and asked, "Did he ever mention Paris?" She blinked, surprised. "No. Why?" I shrugged as if it were nothing, but her face said otherwise. A sliver of doubt, a flicker of discomfort. That's all I needed. Because the truth? It doesn't need a spotlight. It only needs a spark. She turned toward the mirror, admiring the dress while adjusting a strand of hair behind her ear. "Paris sounds romantic," she said, forcing a small smile. "We've never been, but maybe for the honeymoon." I simply nodded, keeping my gaze neutral, but inside I was already 1,000 miles ahead. That trip, the one she didn't know about? I had the photos, the receipts, the memories etched in my bones. Paris was supposed to be our reset, our second chance. Instead, it became the last chapter of a book I never agreed to close. As I helped her out of the gown, she reached for her phone, a sleek little thing tucked inside her purse. I moved a touch too fast, accidentally knocking it to the floor. It landed face up, screen still on, and there it was, my opportunity. I bent to pick it up, and in the same motion let mine slip from my pocket, face down, unlocked, waiting. A photo just visible enough to catch her eye when she glanced over. Me and Daniel, arm in arm, smiling, time-stamped from just months ago. She paused, froze, really. A flicker of recognition passed over her face like a ripple on still water. But she didn't say anything. Neither did I. I just handed her phone back, calm and casual. "Sorry about that," I said, brushing imaginary dust off the hem of the gown. She nodded, but her eyes were distant now, like someone replaying a conversation they suddenly realized had a hidden meaning. The air shifted, heavier, tighter, and I knew the picture had spoken louder than I ever could. She didn't ask, not directly. But from that moment on, her laughter sounded more like a question than a celebration. I watched her trying to stitch together the pieces in her mind, the timeline, the photos, the missing truths. And yet, I never confirmed a thing. That's the beauty of silence when it's deliberate. It forces the other person to sit with the weight of their own questions. She adjusted her dress again, but her posture had changed. Less carefree, more cautious. Like she was waiting for the mirror to say something it wasn't. We finished the fitting without a word about the photo, but it lingered between us, humming quietly beneath the sound of pins clicking into fabric. I offered her a glass of water before she left. She declined. Her smile was tighter now, stretched thinner than before. I opened the door for her, wished her luck with the seating chart, the caterers, all the rituals of a celebration built on illusion. And as she walked away, clutching her bag just a little closer, I knew something had shifted. Subtly, but permanently. She hadn't seen everything yet, but she'd seen enough to start asking the right questions, and I wasn't finished, not even close. Some truths don't need to be said aloud. They only need to be seen. And next time, she wouldn't leave just wondering. She'd leave knowing. When she came back, her energy had shifted. She still wore the smile, still asked about my week, still complimented the lighting in the fitting room, but it was all a touch too careful. Like she was walking through a room full of glass and didn't trust the floor. I welcomed her with the same warmth as always, my voice calm, my posture open. But I could feel the weight behind her words now. She wasn't here just for a final fitting. She was here looking for confirmation. I let her settle in slowly, chatting about the flower arrangements she'd just finalized. "White lilies," she said. "His favorite." I nodded, adjusting the fabric around her waist, but said nothing. I remembered Daniel once told me he was allergic to lilies. Or maybe that was just another lie. Either way, I wasn't going to correct her. She needed to find her own cracks in the story. That was part of the unraveling. The soft, silent kind that makes everything come undone at the seams without a single tear being pulled. As I zipped her into the dress, I took a step back. "So," I said gently, smoothing the fabric down her back, "has he told you everything yet?" Her breath hitched, just slightly, barely noticeable. But I saw it. I watched her turn toward me slowly, trying to keep her expression unreadable. I met her eyes and held them. No smile, no softness, just quiet clarity. It was no longer about pain. It was about presence, and letting her feel the full weight of the truth she already suspected. She didn't answer, not at first, just stared at me, frozen somewhere between panic and realization. I didn't press. I simply reached into the drawer beneath the counter and pulled out a folded slip of paper. Clean, precise, just like everything else in this boutique. I handed it to her with both hands, like a fragile keepsake. She hesitated, fingers brushing the edge like it might burn. But eventually, she took it, slowly, carefully, and in that moment, something shifted again, this time louder than silence. She unfolded it like it might tear. A list, names, dates, cities, all women Daniel had woven into his tangled web. Some overlapped, some lied to, some discarded. My name was there too, circled in red ink, not for drama, but for clarity. She scanned the list, and I watched the color drain from her face. One name at a time, 1 year at a time. Each one a thread unraveling the image of the man she thought she knew. This wasn't revenge, it was the truth, the raw, unsweetened kind no one ever prepares for. Still, I didn't speak. I didn't need to. There's a kind of closure that doesn't require words, only acknowledgement. She looked up at me, eyes glossy, but not yet broken. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. I wanted to say because no one did it for me, but I didn't. I just stepped back and straightened the veil on her shoulders. "Because the dress should never lie," I said softly. And in that moment, she wasn't a rival. She was a woman waking up from a dream that never belonged to her. She stood there, silent, her fingers still clutching the list like it might fly away if she let go. I saw her swallow hard, her shoulders trembling ever so slightly beneath the weight of what she now knew. The fitting room was quiet, just the ticking of the wall clock and the distant hum of laughter from another bride on the other side of the boutique. 2 women, same space, completely different worlds. One planning her future, the other watching hers collapse, stitch by stitch. I adjusted the hem of her dress, careful and slow. Every movement a message. I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to free you. And maybe, in some strange way, to free myself too. We both stood in the mirror, side by side, two reflections, one story unraveling. She blinked quickly, then caught her breath. I wondered if she'd cry. She didn't, not yet. But I could see the shift in her eyes. Something hardened. Something woke up. She didn't thank me, but she didn't need to. The silence said enough. When she finally stepped out of the gown, her hands moved with mechanical focus, folding the veil neatly, placing it on the chair. No more bright smiles, no more wedding talk. Just the woman she truly was beneath all the lace. She left quietly, the list tucked inside her purse, her heels clicking a little faster on the hardwood floor. She came for a dress. She left carrying the weight of a tailor-made truth. And I knew, when she closed that door, she wasn't walking toward a wedding. She was walking toward a reckoning. It started with a call to cancel the final alterations. No explanation, no apology. Just a quiet voice on the other end of the line saying the wedding was off. I didn't flinch. I didn't ask why. I simply replied, "Of course," and marked the appointment as canceled. But I knew. The boutique might be full of flowers and fittings, but beneath all that tulle, I've learned to hear what people don't say. And what Vanessa didn't say spoke volumes. The thread had finally snapped. Rumors travel fast in this business. The florist heard from the planner, who heard from the venue. Vanessa confronted Daniel, in public. No screaming, no chaos. Just one sentence, spoken with a terrifying kind of calm. "How many other lists do you think I've seen?" That's what the planner said she said. And apparently, he tried to spin it, tried to lie his way back into her trust like he always did. But this time, it didn't work. This time, the truth wore heels. A few days later, he showed up at the boutique, angry, loud. He walked in like he still had a right to something, demanded to see me, said I'd ruined everything. I didn't even blink, just turned to him, in front of a room full of brides and their mothers, and said, "You'll need to leave now." No shouting, no drama, just a firm, final line drawn in the shape of my backbone. And he did, because deep down, even he knew, you don't win against someone who's already done healing. He lingered at the door for a second, like he thought I might change my mind. Like I might fall back into the silence he once mistook for weakness. But I didn't move. I held his gaze until he turned and walked out, the heavy glass door clicking shut behind him. That sound, clean, final, felt better than any apology he could have offered. I went back to helping a young bride with her train, my voice calm as ever. "It's all about balance," I told her, smiling. "You want it to float, not drag." That night, I stayed late at the shop. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I swept the floors, organized swatches, steamed a few veils, small things that made me feel steady again. For the first time in a long while, there wasn't anything brewing under the surface. No ache, no open wound, just space, quiet. And then, around closing, the delivery came. A bottle of champagne, chilled, and a note written in a familiar hand. No signature, just a single line in delicate cursive. "You dressed me better than he ever deserved." I stood there for a moment, fingers tracing the curve of each word. No fireworks, no fanfare, just the kind of acknowledgement that tastes better than revenge ever could. Because this wasn't about winning anymore. It was about reclaiming something that was mine from the beginning. My voice, my strength, my story. I poured a glass from the bottle, let the bubbles settle before I took a sip. It wasn't celebration, not exactly. It was something quieter. A toast to every woman who's been lied to and still chose grace. To every truth revealed not with screaming, but with stillness. To every seam I ever stitched while my heart was breaking. I stood in the middle of that boutique, the same boutique where I'd once imagined walking out in a dress of my own, and felt whole. Not healed, not over it. just whole. In this place, I'd watched women cry with joy, with fear, with regret. I'd zipped up futures and pinned down doubts. But this was something different. Because for once, I wasn't just the one helping someone else step into their story. I had stepped into mine. And it didn't need a groom, or a ring, or a perfect white dress. It only needed truth. The kind that doesn't wrinkle. The kind that fits just right. The kind that doesn't need to be spoken out loud to be heard. I never cut her dress. I didn't ruin the wedding. I didn't sabotage anything. All I did was hold up the mirror and let the reflection speak. And when it did, she saw it. He saw it. And I saw myself, not as the woman he left behind, but as the woman who stayed behind and rebuilt. I didn't cut the dress. I cut the illusion and stitched my power into every seam.